Hi everybody, I'm back with another video, and today's video is going to be of the FA Cup match between Everton and Tottenham. And before we start, this video is made using Keyframe, which is a very useful and clean professional tool to make these professional level illustrations and get clear messages out to your players, coaches, or whoever you make content for. So let's get right into it because I want to make it a bit quicker, try and move through the video and get through the concepts. So this is a picture of in the second half, and just to show when Calvert-lewin was subbed off due to injury, looked like he had a hamstring problem. Richarlison took his spot, and that just moved Everton's 4-4-2 over a little bit. A few personnel changes, but a really exciting game nonetheless. And Everton and Tottenham both implemented a 4-4-2 in their defensive phase, and they did things similar but a little bit different. We see that Tottenham, in possession of the ball, used the concept of Salida Volpiana through the half space to drop Højbjerg from the pivot position into a deeper role, and this happened some of the time, not always. And sometimes it was Ndombele dropping and creating a back three. But what happened with the Tottenham and even the Everton build-up is sometimes it became very isolated, which forced a very direct match. So we can see here then Lamela was also playing as an attacking midfielder, and then Son, and when Kane came on, especially before Kane came on, Son was very much a presence between the lines, and they lacked a presence further forward in behind the defense to then pin or break the last line of Everton's back line. And then one thing to note is this is a really clear game to watch if you want to see how a team can change from man orientation higher up the field, and then as they move deeper to more of a space-oriented system. So we'll look at examples of both. We see in the first half Calvert-lewin, common rotation with dropping, which let Decore or an advanced midfielder run in behind. So we take advantage of this man orientation from Tottenham. As we see here, the center back is drawn out, so now Decore is able to create positional or dynamic superiority, I should say, to create the run in behind and take up this space. And then we also can see the disconnect between two center defenders. They're a bit stretched here, and there might be a player on his weak side shoulder which is causing this, but nonetheless the movement's there. And now a ball in behind could be quite dangerous, but then we can see where this initiates from. With Yerry Mina on the ball in the half space, he dribbles to progress, and this didn't happen very much as I thought it would, but as he dribbles to progress, Calvert-lewin checks to the ball, which allows the space for Yerry Mina to try and find Decore in behind. And then the double width structure from Everton with Iwobi and the right fullback creating the width and slightly staggering, something they don't prioritize as much as other teams, but this is often a fail-safe for the center back in possession to simply play wide and then recirculate possession. And then with Decore coming from a deeper area, more in behind, we can see the 10 Sigurdsson through the left half space where he played most of the game between the lines. And now, just a quick note on Tottenham structure. As we said, they played a 4-4-2. And their 4-4-2 varied a little bit from Everton's in a few different ways. One way I felt that Tottenham and Everton structure differentiated each other was based on the spatial orientation and the cues each of the Tottenham players took from each other. as well as their commitment to tracking players. It was very different between the two teams. Everton, as we'll see, they structured it more and used the wide players to track runs, whereas sometimes it was very conditional in which who tracked what player. So from the midfielder and Ndombele and Højbjerg, we can see the players closest to them. They often didn't track the runners into the deeper areas and pass them on to the defenders, or they would track them in the final third, which would cause the differentiating of the numbers between each of the defensive lines. So here, Everton in possession again, we can see a little bit more of the man orientation. Everton built up with two center backs and with a deeper or more narrow fullback. He's not considered a deep fullback, but he is, and he's not considered an inverted fullback, but it is worth noting that the connection he creates is a little bit shorter and more narrow than normal. So here we can see Tottenham's man orientation then compared to the Everton team. So Højbjerg tracks Sigurdsson, who's dropping deeper. Lucas is on the holding midfielder. Son cutting off the weak side center backs, and then we see the orientation across the field. And when this happens, this almost compromises completely the compactness of the team, and then we see spaces created between the lines, such as here, as we saw during the game. But the team, Everton in possession, didn't utilize these spaces and weren't deliberate about exploiting them, and many of the chances came from set pieces or transitions. So rather than exploiting this man orientation and stretching the defense, it more came so in transition and taking advantage of these spaces in a more direct way. So now Everton in possession again. We can take a look at the deeper fullbacks. So this time the left fullback is a bit deeper, but again, not as a third center defender really, more as just a narrow, deeper fullback to maintain a tighter connection along the back line. And now Tottenham's 4-4-2, controlling the holding midfielder as well as determining which side the ball will be forced on. And we see Lamela taking a wide pressing cue to press the fullback, and the opposite would be true for the left midfielder of Tottenham as well. And then we see Doucouré varying his position as a double pivot with Davies. And Doucouré's position was very much a box-to-box midfielder, and I'll even show the Everton full line. So their back four was a bit deeper and a bit more narrow than what we typically think of a back four or expansive back four. So this asymmetry and variation is to maintain connections between players, as well as the versatility from the holding midfielders to occupy higher spaces or drop deeper to come and get the ball. Just wanted to put this picture in to show the compactness and the low block example of Everton. And we can even see the hints of what I meant earlier on how their defense slightly changes a little bit in the low block. So what I mean by this is we almost see the wide players like a Iwobi or a Richarlison having more of a defensive role, so they're more likely to drop to the back line to cover the wide areas and almost create a makeshift back five. And we also see the positioning of Sigurdsson coming out of the 10 area and moving back into a defensive area. Now this wasn't always the case, and the wide players was very conditional and If the circumstances were right, they would drop in to create a back five or just to defend in a deeper area. But it wasn't always like this. And Sigurdsson and Calvert-Lewin's main job were the center backs and holding midfielders, so it wasn't always this way, but I thought it happened enough to make noteworthy. And then we can see Tottenham's occupation between the lines, which was very loose. It wasn't very structural. It was circumstantial, and the players occupied these spaces to try and manipulate the defenders, access the space in behind, and that was the priority with the team, rather than compressing the defense through their positioning and ball circulation, and then exploiting the spaces as the defense collapsed. But it was more draw the defenders out, break the defensive line, and then access the space in behind. So now I just wanted to show a build-up phase from Tottenham. And when they did try and build from the back, it often led to isolation, and maybe one of the reasons why was the positioning of Højbjerg. And as we see here, he's very deep, rather than positioning himself higher up the field, where he can affect the first line of pressure of Everton, which I'll show here. If he was positioned higher, he'd be able to affect these three players, especially Sigurdsson, who was more drawn to him as the holding midfielder, and because the space he opened up wasn't then exploited by other players. So another thing I just wanted to note was Højbjerg, by him not playing in a higher area. I'll just redo that so I don't get the Everton players wrong. So by not positioning himself higher, it also drew more pressure to the Tottenham back line by Sigurdsson, Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin all jumping to press, and it put them in close proximity with the Tottenham players. So by doing this, they kind of made it more difficult for themselves and drew more pressure around the ball, as well as the advanced players then being able to be marked through man orientation. So the cover of the press was a simple man orientation, and the first line passing options often led to their isolation, which forced them to go direct most of the time. And now the last picture, Tottenham in possession again. One last time showing Højbjerg and Ndombele. And we can even see the asymmetry to create connections and circulation across the back line. Højbjerg drops into the right side outside of the center backs. Ndombele holds the pivot area, and now the left fullback can occupy the left-hand side, creating a circulation structure. And now we can see Everton's defensive shape and how they lined up against Tottenham. They're two forwards, they're midfielders, they're staggered midfielders, which is important to note because the deeper positioning of the holding midfielder gave him better access between the lines and to control players checking Harry Kane when he came on, or Son when he was playing as the forward, or even Eric Lamela operating in these spaces. And oftentimes with this, we would see Sigurdsson, he would play a bit deeper just to maintain this vertical compactness between the team. So by doing this, they were able to maintain vertical compactness and create access on multiple different lines and put them closer to Tottenham players in the advanced areas. So this was just a quick, brief analysis comparing the two 4-4-2s. Everton ended up winning 5-4 and moved to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one.